The so-awaited League of Legends Wild Rift is finally here to stay. And if you want to start playing the most prominent mobile game on Android up to date, stay tuned because in today's video I'll talk about the best champions that you can pick. Not only does these classes have simple mechanics for beginners, but they are very effective with pretty much everything they were designed to do. This means I'll be dividing this character into different categories, starting with the top lane, junglers, mid lane, and finally the dual lane. And I'll also give you 3 options for each one of those for you to keep in mind. So no matter which role you prefer, there are plenty of characters for you to choose and thrive in battle. And just try to remember that these classes are not necessarily the best in the most competitive meta game, but are simple enough to start with and are absolutely great in the early and mid game. So if you want to perform well and rank up fast, keep this video in mind. But without any further ado, let's start with the top lane. Also known as solo, the top lane is based where the dragon respawn and it's designed for more tanky heroes that don't rely on anyone else. And my first big recommendation, it's obviously the mighty Garen. This hero doesn't have a lot of mechanics and can crush his enemies with his judgment skill that spin and destroy everything in its path. Not to mention his ultimate skill, the Massian Justice, that deals a lot of damage. A second top laner I have to recommend is Dr. Mundo, a tank with a lot of healing, like his ultimate skill Sadism, that regenerates 50% of his max health and even grants movement speed. So with that many healing skills, you hardly need to go back to base to recover. And finally Malphite. This champion is the perfect tank and can sustain a lot of damage, especially if you pick the right loadout, which I strongly recommend is Scaling Tank. Having Malphite on your team is almost a guarantee that the solo lane will remain safe as long as your team plays cards right. If you want to play jungler, the first big recommendation I have is the Bladesman Master Yi. I consider this one of the easier champions to start with, and all you have to do is basically farm with basic attacks thanks to his passive double strike. And as your opponent show up, you can throw at them all your skills to buff yourself and proceed to attack them non-stop. The second recommendation I have is Jax. His passive Relentless Assaults grants a lot of attack speed that can stack up as long as you keep attacking. And his Leap Strike allow him to move swiftly against his foes and kill them quickly. Overall, this is a champion with a lot of mobility and speed. And next, we have Xin Zhao, a champion with a huge burst damage thanks to all his skills like 3,000 Strike, Wild Becomes Lightning and his ultimate Crescent Guard. He also doesn't really have any difficulty farming in jungle, and it's very efficient at doing so. So this is a very straightforward option for those who want to kill a lot of your opponents and be the star of the team. The mid lane is one of the most complex lanes in the game and will require you to dominate all of your character's mechanics to perform well. Luckily, there are some great characters that are simple enough to play in this position. So let's start with Annie. Depending on your loadout, especially if you pick Assassin Mage, you can practically kill instantly any of your opponents, especially if you have Tibur summoned. That's all thanks to her all damage skills like Disintegrate and Incinerate. And she can even stun her enemies thanks to her skill Pyromania, allowing her to do even more damage. Next, we have Lux, a powerful caster that can deal quite a bit of damage if you manage to hit her skills like Light Binding and Lucent Singularity. And her ultimate skill is an awesome resource to have on your team, since it can deal 300 magic damage on the whole map, making it perfect to eliminate one or more targets at low health. And finally Gragas, a very versatile champion and honestly one of the best so far, to the point of being almost broken. His high DPS in a huge area combined with his tank abilities allow him to burst your enemies with awesome combos. Not to mention his passive Happy Hours that even grants some health recovery every time you cast any spell. And finally, the dual lane. The secret for success here is having a great support that allow the ADC to do his job. And Alistar is by far the best supporter in the game. Not only does he tanks a lot, but he also heals nearby allies, thanks to his passive Triumphant Roar. And he can completely remove all crowd control's effects thanks to his ultimate Unbreakable Will. He can also knock enemies all over the place with his Pulverize and Headbutt. Braum is another great option, as he can tank like no other champion, thanks to his base defense status. His Winter Bite, together with his ultimate skill, Glacial Fissure, can slow the enemies so that you can take your opponents by surprise. And his defensive skill, Stay Behind Me, is great to defend your ADC and take all the incoming damage. And now, there is Jinx, a perfect ADC designed to kill all the tanks and destroy all towers and objectives. She is quite simple to play, and if you manage to kill someone at the very start, you will become very powerful. Her ultimate, the Super Mega Death Rockets, deals a ton of damage, allowing you to turn up the tides of any battle in your favor. This is my suggestions of the best characters you can pick to start Wild Rift. And I believe if you have this list in mind and are willing to learn how to play with all those characters I have mentioned, you always have a solid team, no matter which champions are available for you to pick. And the best part is that they are quite simple to start with, allowing you to rank up all the way up to Emerald, and even beyond without much problem. And remember that the best way to enjoy all of that is by playing on BlueStacks. Not only you'll be able to play with your keyboard and mouse, but also play on your monitor's big screen, allowing you to have a much faster react time and see everything much clearly. But anyway, that's it for now, thank you very much for watching and bye bye.